Hi, I'm Mikey. This is Tyler. We're the founders of Innovative Start Organization. Our nonprofit is teaching financial literacy, and in these videos, we try to inform and not persuade. And again, like I said, with the whole financial literacy aspect, we talk about a bunch of different topics around budgeting and saving and some of those basics, while also touching on maybe some current news items or just some things that might not be within the typical realm of what people think is financial literacy, but is also included in those items. So today, we're going to strictly kind of talk about things around renting, housing, and just real estate in general. Just some of the things that we've seen, some trends that we've seen. Maybe talk about some, the factors within like, what to expect as you're graduating, and or maybe, living off campus. So yeah, we'll talk about that, get a couple things going. But I do want to start off with just kind of some backstory about just, some things that we've dealt with as far as like living off campus, just renting in general, as far as post graduation, and just, like I said, some of the things that we get into before we talk about some of the market trends that we're seeing. But I'll go ahead and start first. The best thing I ever did, also, Tyler, side note, the they were talking to an ASU student, no, University of Arizona student. He said that his housing off campus costs more than him living in the dorms. I said that's ridiculous because where are you living at? You know? But getting back to that, to kind of circle back, and no reason I just stated that. My dorms was 5,700 per semester for closet space. When I moved out off of campus, that changed to being, I think, just under 5,000 for the whole year was my rent. And then at the most expensive place I stayed at, it was about 6,600. That was for a whole year. That's 12 months, right? Versus 5 months dormitory for 5,700. Ridiculous. But yeah, I think the whole aspect of getting an apartment, roommates, everything else. I think a lot of times people do post graduation. I rarely meet anybody um, after graduating college that like gets their own apartment. I think that's just more of an affordability thing. Maybe then I think it's just a trend now, but like you'll probably spend a majority of your 20s unless you build some financial background, either rooming or staying in or renting a place. But just to kind of go back on that, stayed off campus for the rest of my time within college, graduated, and then also continued to rent an apartment. I think some of the biggest things that you take a look at as far as like your living situation is one, how often you're going to be there, location, just a bunch of other factors. Some of the biggest things that like play into how much I'm willing to pay because obviously there's some things that you look at as far as like price points and you're like, I don't think I can do that. One, doesn't even matter what you want to pay. It depends on what the rental, I guess, qualifications are. So most of the time it's either 2.5 or 3 times the amount of rent is what you have to make in a month, which is crazy because in that same spiel, you could probably be paying in rent, which you could also pay on a mortgage, but you can't get a loan for a mortgage. But that's another discussion. But a lot of the times you have
Also,
to go ahead.
for students, sometimes they have the, what is it called? Someone can sign for you, how the parents, if you don't make that 2 to 3
Mhm.
months,
Yeah,
right?
cosigner. I think
Yeah, co-signer. Yeah.
everyone, if you like, I don't know everybody's financial situation, but anybody that I know is not, if you're just a, college student or whatever, is not being able to afford the 2.5, 3 times, rent. So most of the time you need a cosigner. Um, that doesn't really, it really just like whenever somebody cosigns anything, right, regardless if it's housing, car, or whatever, right, that just puts a financial obligation on them as well. So it's a big ask, especially if it's your parents or guardian or whoever it is, because obviously you don't pay your rent or whatever else that can show up on there. Also, there are tools out there to help build on your credit. Most of the time, your rental um, establishment or whatever it is, the management can have some type of tool that they've partnered up with, or you can find some third party tool. For example, BILT Builds um, is a company founded by this young man. Pretty sure he's like the same age as us, Tyler Loki. But he does like a bunch of rewards and stuff like that based off of just paying your rent. So some of you guys can take a look at. But yeah, that's just kind of a quick spiel, Tyler. I don't know about you as far as like your transition from the dormitory to renting and then being a homeowner.
Yeah, that I went to University of Georgia. Living on campus was way more expensive than living off of campus, and um, I lived on campus freshman year because that was required unless you got it waived if you lived in town or
Mm,
like you were a commuter. And then afterwards, I lived in student housing for the next 3 years. So I think my rent was average between for those 3 years. I think sophomore year was $550, and then the most I paid per month was $650. But I think that's gone up. Like the average now is like, and I wasn't living anything crazy either. There's some student housing at UGA in Athens that's $1,200 plus a month. So um, I think the average now in Athens may be 700, 750 for student housing off of campus. Um, I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed having my own kitchen. I meal prepped. I ended up getting off the food plan as well, the dining hall plan my junior and senior year, and that was pretty good. I I was um, whenever I was living in Atlanta, I rented about 30 to 40 minutes away from my office. And so everybody thought I was crazy, but my rent was really cheap and I just ate the cost of driving in. So I just wake up earlier, drive into the office, go to the gym at the office because it was a deducted amount, like a smaller amount than like a normal gym would have been. And then I would just stay there all day and then either beat traffic home or just stay later. And so I wasn't staying in traffic. So that's an option as well, as people are going and graduating to sacrifice in that aspect. Some people don't want to. Some people value living in the city more. And that's totally fine too. Like if I hung out with friends super late, I would just crash on their couch and it wasn't that big of a deal. But I was honestly, I wanted to be more scrappy and save money. That also, I didn't, living in the city wasn't something I valued a lot. So maybe if you live in a city and you pay more in rent, then you just don't go out, just don't eat out as much or something. I don't know. Like there's ways to hack it. It's just,
mm.
again, just like we say, it's all comes down to personal preference.
No, yeah. Public transportation is a big thing too. Like if you're gonna live in the city, one of the things that you're probably going to give up is, your own private, transportation. So just driving back and forth. That's how sometimes people just weigh it like, either I live, this far away and then end up paying gas for this, or I can live, closer and not pay gas because it's a, walking, biking, hop on a bus, couple stops to get to work. Um, One of the
I will
biggest,
say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say real quick, Atlanta is not does not have good public transportation, and it is known for that. So that's why unfortunately, that wasn't even an option. I had to drive in, but I agree. If you can do it, save some money. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, like transportation, especially in the U.S., I think other countries have, especially like Europe and such, but like it's very hard to find a big city that has really good transportation, like outside of maybe like a New York or a Chicago. But like Atlanta's, a top five like largest city in the U.S. Even where I live in Phoenix, it's a larger city, but just depending on how large your downtown area is and everything else, and there's other factors that play into it, like obviously taxes and such, because not I don't think the bus fare, as far as like how much people pay, is also paying for all the things and other aspects that go into just public transportation as a whole. So, a lot of factors that play into that. Obviously, we can get into the nitty gritty, but that's besides the point. Housing is extremely important. I've talked with fellow students before too, like yeah, I'm getting ready to, start my first job. Not sure if I should, you know, stay in the city or commute. you really just have to, make a pros and cons list. Are there sacrifices you're willing to make? And, is it something that's affordable, right? You don't want to get a place and, at the end of the month or after all your bills are due, rent, utilities, and everything else, you have nothing to save or, use for a rainy day or whatever else, right? Um, it's hard because a lot of like luxury renting or whatever, they offer you a lot of things like that, pools, gyms, you gotta for the expense. So those are things you can factor into your pros and cons. Like, okay, maybe I get a place that doesn't have, a built-in washer and dryer or things like that, because these are things that you have to think of in an apartment. Like most apartments that you go into, right? The price is going to go up based, like, again, location, amenities, all these other things, right? So if you want to be, bougied all the way up, expect to pay bougie prices, because a lot of times people are like, oh, 1,500 for this apartment, and I ain't gonna lie, if you find an apartment for 1,500, that's a steal. Especially if it's like a luxury apartment, that's a steal. You'll have people like 1,500. That looks good to him, them. Never in my mind after I graduated did I think I would be paying 15 anything, unless I was like, buying a house. But here I am paying more than that. So,
But one thing to know about those amenities is like it looks sexy whenever you're going and you're thinking you're going to use it. Now I know some people, and I think you use the gym at your place. I could
mhm,
be wrong. But some people they don't ever use the amenities. Like in the beginning, they're like, "Oh, this is such a addition and add-on," but really have some honest conversations. Will you really use the pool? Will you really use the gym? Because it's great, but you're also paying for that. So if there's also another complex that doesn't have these nice things, which is totally cool, maybe not everybody does that. I don't know. It's something that I remember in college. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's got this," and
facts.
they used to try to sell me, and
hmm
I never used this stuff.
hmm
So
No,
I don't know.
that's
Just
truthful. I
weird
would say
stuff.
I would say one thing that doesn't like bother me is the pool. Like I could care less about the pool. Most of the times here in Arizona, everything comes with a pool. Even like the most shadiest apartments have a pool. So it's doesn't really bother me. The gym does. If I go into the gym and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have a gym amenities," and it's a damn treadmill and like some big dumbbells that only go up to like 50 pounds, it's gonna be a no for me. Um, Smith machine be pushing it because I like to have free weights. But that's just me when I like pick. That's the only thing I'm worried about. The apartment and everything else, like layout, like it's whatever. I could care less about the color schemes or whatever else. I'm only laying my head down and getting on my laptop. Like, if you ever get a girlfriend or whatever else that looks like, best believe that's a completely different story. They'll have you not picking an apartment just because, the cabinets are not a certain color. Like, that's a whole nother story about a whole nother expense. But I think the gym is extremely important to me, so that was like one of the factors, like I said, like as far as weighing out, oh, if I'm gonna stay in this apartment or this one. And then just yeah, obviously commute and such. But yes. Also here in Arizona, your not gyms, the pools are open year round, so they never close. So again, really just depends on the area you're in. Like if you sign for the pool and you live in an area where the pool is only open after Memorial Day and closes at Labor Day, like, is that something that you're going to be using over that period of summer, especially if you're a working adult? Like it's not like you're a college student or whatever. You can go chill by the pool, enjoy your summer or whatever that is. I wish I could be doing something like that. But if you're a working adult, by the time you get off, the sun's basically on its way out of there. So you probably got, 2 hours. It's not even the peak sun. So if you're looking to catch a tan or whatever else, right? Really, really look at it from a realistic standpoint. Don't be just like, oh my gosh, this pool is beautiful. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna be Michael Phelps. You're probably not. So, just be realistic with yourself and what you want out of the apartment, because amenities can come another way, right? Do they have like little study areas or little offices you can use? Maybe you work from home and you want to step away from your home setting and get one of the offices or something just to talk. Sometimes places have like other things where you can do like actually like games and stuff. So maybe they might have, connection to like a park or something that's nearby. Those are just things that you can take in value. One of the biggest things in AZ, and I'll never, ever, ever, ever not go without this, but when it comes to this heat, I would say, in general, any place that I'm like, oh, this doesn't have any type of shade or whatever else as far as like their outdoor amenity, is gonna be a no for me. Because how am I gonna enjoy those amenities when for almost half the year is 100 plus degrees? No. So that's just the big thing too. Like, if they got outdoor amenities, am I really gonna be outside playing badminton? Probably not. Am I going to be out there playing cornhole? Probably not. It's 114 degrees outside. Probably not. Um, but yeah, the gym for sure. But kind of segueing off of that, what we want to do, kind of reel back in, is to talk about some of the aspects around some of the market trends that we see within just housing in general, whether that's renting or getting into, buying your own house for your first big purchase as far as like a home. And then also some other things that you can also take a look at, which is, if you wanted to invest, what are some ways that you can get into investing within real estate? Whether that be like, commercial or just like general. There's a lot of aspects that go into it. The easiest, I say, the one that you can do right after, you say you looked at this video and you're like, okay, like how do I get into it now? Um, REITs, I think this is like the short way of calling it, but it's a REITs, or it's like a real estate stock. But essentially, there's some real estate groups on there. They have dividends that they're required to pay out. They don't really have a lot of growth, but it gives you some ownership within just kind of commercial real estate or whatnot. Um, Take a look at those if that's something that interests you. You want to get into investing into real estate. That's about the easiest and quickest way without any hoops or hurdles, hassles. You can get straight into it. Um, After that, that's when you're gonna start going through the uphill battle of, getting a little bit more invested, whether that's um, getting your license, starting your own firm, or just, something simple as far as getting the duplex and rent out the other side option. And there's plenty of things. So always do your research. But I'm gonna turn it over to Tyler to talk about some more real estate aspects and just some of his knowledge about that too as well.
Yeah, I'd say everything Michael was saying. There's like several ways you could get a duplex and live in one side and rent out the other. Um, and then because you're able to do that, have you can get an FHA loan that'll allow you to be like a first time home buyer loan, so you don't have to have 20% down. If that's within your budget, and that's something you'll need to look at individually. But also, there's ways you could seller finance that as well. Like the person that's selling it, you could always talk to the real estate agent, or maybe it's the sellers listing it themselves to say, hey, are you interested in seller financing this? There's plenty of YouTube videos out there. I think that's, you can get really scrappy and creative with ways that you do this. But also, like, it is cheaper to rent than to buy a house. Like, and that's just one thing, at least right now in this market, in most areas, not all, but most. Like buying a house, you got to cut the grass, you got to take care of the plumbing, you have to take care of the outside of the house, pests, spray for, do termites and uh, flooring, painting, all this stuff adds up. Whereas if you just rent, you can hopefully you have a good property manager and they'll take care of this for you. That's what comes with part of your rent cost. Now, over time, though, rent does increase more than a mortgage, like a 30-year mortgage would. Um, that's something to think about as well. But again, like, we talk about this all the time. It's like, what do you want out of life? Some
Hmm.
people want to move around. Some people don't want to be tied down somewhere, which is totally fine. So, maybe if you want to have portfolio exposure to real estate, you can invest in a REIT, or maybe you have a friend that's invested in real estate. You can invest partially in what they got going on. There's several ways to do that, but like it's really, just to talk about this current market, I saw this earlier today. Um, Today is August 14th. So per residential club, there the the estimated number of home buyers and sellers actually in the housing market is the most that there's ever been. There's the most sellers compared to buyers. See, in Redfin stated in June 2025 there were 508,000 more homes. 508, yeah, 508,000 more homes in the U.S., more home sellers than there were home buyers. Sorry, I'm messing this up here, but that just shows you it's the sellers are trying to get there. But what's also interesting, and you can look this up, I don't know the exact stat, but I think it's like 40% of people that have a mortgage, or sorry, 40% of home buyers do not have, 40% of home owners do not have a mortgage on their home. So like that's a pretty big amount. I don't, in my personal opinion, those people probably are not going to sell to go get a higher, a high interest rate we're at right now. So I think it's just some people would say we're in stagflation now because there's
Yeah.
no incentive for people to sell a home if they don't have a mortgage. Like, why would you do that? You want a paid off home, in my personal opinion. But
Yeah. Um,
um, that's, yeah. What do you think, Mikey?
no, that's good. I think one of the biggest things too is even though, right, you buy your home, you pay it off, you still have property taxes. That's one of the craziest thing. I think any homeowner will always like argue tooth and nail, up and down, be ready to crash out about those property taxes. Because it's kind of crazy to you because you're like, okay, don't I own this, right? Why do I have to pay tax? Whole nother, spiel we can get into about property taxes and everything else, but it's almost never ending, right? Obviously your property taxes are gonna, come nowhere near paying property tax plus your mortgage, right? So, one less bill on the table, but at the same time, right, depending on how long your loan term was or whatever else, right? Maybe you spent the last 30 years paying off your home. To go into that stat that Tyler's talking about, right? It's not like somebody bought a house and then paid it off within the 10 years. These are people that have had these homes for a long, long time, like a couple generations that probably passed through that house. They got grandkids, coming to visit type deal because most homes that you see or most people who are home buyers, that rate that you get is usually on a 30-year mark. Like, and then a lot of times people like refinance and there's these balloon payments and there's a lot of other aspects that go into real estate. But um, the homeowners that I was just talking about, those people, like I said, they've been having those houses for a long time. Our generation, that being Gen Z, um, we get trended a lot to being, more rentals than home buyers. But we're at a really kind of rock and a hard place because in the same, breath where economically wise, right? When you look at economics, if you have more, I guess, sellers or if you have less demand, right? Price is supposed to come down, but that's not the case. So again, you're looking at what, okay, why are we, steadily seeing houses, the housing market, especially like these houses and stuff, increase in price, these homes, right? But, there's nobody buying them up, right? That's the real issue. And I think that a lot of times when people are like, oh, you can't just, just because you have some money, go and get a loan, right? You have to get approved by that by your bank or whatever else. And right, that's a big ask, right? You go to a bank and you say, hey, there's just $300,000, $400,000 home I'm trying to get. No bank is just gonna be like, yeah, I got you, here you go or whatnot. So there's a lot of other factors that play into that, and to get up to that point, right? And then you have to talk about, okay, what are some non-negotiables and things like that when it comes to buying a home, right? And then as Tyler was saying, it doesn't just stop there because home ownership means that everything that goes on within that house itself comes out of your pocket. Unlike when you're renting, as long as you have some good property managers, you know, pest, water, garbage disposal broke or whatever, all you got to do is put in a maintenance request, right? When you're a homeowner, it's either you're gonna, pay somebody to come and do it, or you're gonna become a YouTube tutorial demon, something. So, um, there's an issue or a crisis they were looking at as far as, right, do you think, I think also too, there's a study out there that shows that the average age for homeowners is going up. So it was trending, a little bit younger, but now it's like starting to increase as far as age goes, which makes a lot of sense because people our age, right, at the start of the Gen Z kind of generation, if you really look at how many of those people from a 28 to about that 20 range, partial part of them are still in college, right? You still got 2, 3 years within that range, and then on the later half are trying to right navigate this job market because you got to have something stable enough to justify all of that. A lot of like rug pulls as far as just the job market as a whole is it's there's not enough stability to say, hey, I need to go and buy or purchase this home. So you might see a trend more to where people, go back and live with their parents. By all means, that's about the smartest thing you can do if you can, deal with your parents. Because a lot of times people are like, yeah, I go live with my parents, and then they're like, they get on my nerves. But at the same time, right?
No, it has to be a healthy environment,
it
or
has to,
else you
it
just
has to be because, but there's options out there. Weigh all your options. If you have the healthy home to go back into, by all means, don't rush it. I always tell people like, if your parents are willing to do that, I think the U.S. is probably one of the only places as far as like U.S. being a culture, where after 18 you're kind of fending for yourself. So it doesn't always have to be that way. If you have that relationship and all that stuff, please utilize it, right? Um, a lot of times you get out there as a young adult and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was so much that, and it's always going to be a learning kind of curve all the way up until probably, you on your way out. So, um, just it's overwhelming, a lot of information. I think a lot of people, if you're not business oriented, like I know so many friends who you start talking to them about business aspects and they brain turn off, they have no idea. They're like, yeah, I don't even care. I don't even know how that's impacting me. Like, they're just closed off to it, right? Um, and it's fine, but I think general knowledge helps a lot because then you can start to understand some of the things that you see as far as like trends and news articles and such, right? Um, one thing you can do, right? If your parents own a home, ask them like, hey, you don't even gotta ask. You could go on Zillow or whatever else. You can look at the property, how much the properties went up from probably when your parents last purchased it, because it'll probably have that information on there up to what it might be estimated till now. And your neighbor and whoever else. You can look at any state or whatever. These are things that you look at. Also, one of the biggest things you should look at is CPI. A lot of times when you're deciding on maybe you got an offer from two different cities, states, whatever it is, look at that. Look at that consumer price index. Um, it's extremely important to know what that is, but essentially you need to look at is your salary or whatever they're going to pay you going to have the same purchasing power, in a different city, right? Because one city could be offering you, 60,000 a year, right? And the other one's offering 70, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the one where it's 70, but the one where it's 70 has a higher cost of living, right? And that's basically like making 45,000 in the city that's giving you 60. So extremely important. You have Google, Chat, GPT, all of that. You ain't even got to learn to do the calculation like I had to do in school, but um, use those tools in order to like really understand what you're getting out of that. I think being financially sound, you have to really hit hard on that in the beginning, and as soon as you get all those hardships, as far as like that huge learning curve out the way, at the gate of becoming an adult in this working world, everything else after that is going to fall into place as far as your level of understanding, your comprehension of it, and just your ability to execute on whatever it is as far as like navigating the financial working world. But those are just my couple pieces on that. I'm gonna let Tyler wrap it up as far as on some of the real estate aspects and maybe just some tips or tricks for you guys as far as just understanding some of those pieces that we talked about.
yeah, I think you hit on a lot of it. I would say there's some first-time home buyer incentives. So just if you're looking to buy a home, I would look into that. There's also depending on what state you live in, there's federal and state grants to help you out. So I know someone that was in a blue collar industry, and there was a blue collar grant that covered some of his closing costs. So, just look into some things. I highly recommend it. And again, those grants will vary from county to state and then also federal as well. But I think you hit on it, Mikey. That's all for me.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, you can catch us every week at ISO's YouTube channel. Other than that, we just really hit on some of the real estate aspects, just kind of give you guys a quick synopsis on that. But please tune in every week. Please let us know in the comments what it is that you guys want us to talk about, or if you have any opinions about some of the things that we discussed in this video here. And then again, like, comment, and subscribe for more things about ISO and just financial literacy. But we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you all next week. See you.